April 16, 1945. A bright spring morning in Germany. If you stood on the road leading out of the city of Weimar, you would see something that didn't make sense. It looked like a parade. Hundreds of people were walking together. Men in fine suits wearing polished shoes and neat hats. Women dressed in elegant coats, their hair styled perfectly, their faces carefully made up. Some were talking casually. Some were even smiling, as if they were heading to a concert or a garden party. They looked proud, comfortable, important. These were not ordinary people. They were the wealthy, the educated, the respected citizens of Weimar, the cultural elite. But this was no celebration. They were being forced to walk. On both sides of the road marched American soldiers. Their uniforms were dirty from days of fighting. Their faces were hard, serious. Their fingers rested near the triggers of their rifles. They were not smiling. They were watching. The civilians complained as they walked. "Why are we doing this? This is ridiculous. My shoes are ruined." Some laughed under their breath. Others shook their heads in disbelief. They thought this was some kind of show, a trick, a piece of propaganda. They believed the Americans were exaggerating stories. They believed they were innocent. But General George S. Patton did not believe them. Just 2 days earlier, he had visited a place 5 miles away, on a hill above the city. A place called Buchenwald. What he saw there changed him. He had seen the ovens. He had seen the piles of bodies. He had seen things no human being should ever see. And he made a decision. If the people of Weimar claimed they knew nothing, then he would make sure they saw everything. The city of Weimar was not just any place. It was known as the heart of German culture. A city of music, literature, and ideas. The home of famous writers like Goethe and Schiller. A place filled with theaters, libraries, and quiet parks. The people who lived there believed they were refined, civilized, above cruelty. And yet, only a short distance away, hidden among the trees, something terrible had been growing for years. Buchenwald concentration camp was built in 1937. For 8 long years, it operated just outside the city. The officers who ran the camp lived normal lives. They had houses, families. They shopped in town. They attended events. They blended in. Smoke from the camp often drifted toward Weimar. Ash settled quietly on windowsills. And still, when asked, many people said the same thing. We didn't know. They said the smoke came from factories. They said the prisoners were workers. They said nothing seemed unusual. They chose not to look too closely. But in April 1945, everything changed. American forces arrived. The war was reaching its end. As tanks rolled through the area, the guards at Buchenwald fled. Inside the camp, thousands of prisoners were still alive, barely. They were weak, starving, broken. When Patton entered the camp, he was not prepared for what he saw. There were bodies everywhere, stacked in piles, lying in the open, left where they had fallen. Men reduced to skin and bone, faces frozen in silence. Even hardened soldiers turned away. Some could not stand the sight. Patton himself felt sick. In his own words, this was not war. This was something far worse. And just beyond the camp, life in the countryside continued. Farmers worked in their fields. Clothes hung on lines in the sun. It was as if 2 different worlds existed side by side. Patton looked at this and made his judgment. He did not believe the people of Weimar were completely unaware. So he gave an order, not just to bring officials, not just to bring leaders. He wanted the most respected citizens, the professors, the businessmen, the doctors, the families who represented the best of the city. American military police entered Weimar. They knocked on doors. They entered shops. They gave a simple instruction. You are coming with us. Some people argued. I am a professional, one man said angrily. You cannot treat me like this. The response was cold and direct. Start walking. And so the march began. About 1,000 civilians were gathered. They were told they were going to visit something nearby. No one explained more than that. At first, the mood was almost casual. People talked among themselves. Some even joked. A few adjusted their clothes, trying to stay presentable. Felt like an inconvenience. Nothing more. But as they walked farther from the city, something changed. The air shifted. A strange smell began to spread. At first it was faint, easy to ignore. Then it grew stronger, heavy, unpleasant, impossible to explain. People stopped talking. Some covered their noses with handkerchiefs. Others sprayed perfume, hoping to block it out. It didn't work. The smell clung to them. The soldiers pushed them forward. No stopping. Keep moving. The closer they got to the hill, the quieter the group became. By the time they reached the gates, no one was smiling anymore. In front of them stood the entrance to Buchenwald. A simple gate, cold, silent. Beyond it, something they were not ready to face. The civilians stepped inside, and everything changed. The moment they crossed the gate, the illusion ended. Inside, there was no music, no laughter, no beauty. Only silence and the weight of something deeply wrong. Thousands of prisoners stood behind barbed wire. They didn't shout. They didn't move forward. They just watched. Their bodies were thin, unnaturally thin. Faces hollow. Eyes sunken and distant, as if they had already seen too much to react anymore. These were the people the citizens of Weimar claimed did not exist. Now they were standing just a few feet away. The prisoners stared at the fine coats, the polished shoes, the clean faces. And in that silence, something passed between them, something heavier than words. The American soldiers formed a line, guiding the civilians forward. Keep walking. No one argued now. The first stop was the crematorium. Even before they reached it, the smell became unbearable. It was thick, heavy, and impossible to escape. It settled in the throat, making it hard to breathe. In the courtyard, there was a large transport trailer. It was filled with bodies. Not covered, not hidden, just piled together. Arms twisted over one another. Legs bent at unnatural angles. Faces frozen. Mouths slightly open as if trying to speak one last time. The civilians stopped. For a moment, no one moved. Then the reactions began. A woman let out a sharp cry and covered her mouth. Another stumbled backward, shaking her head as if trying to deny what she was seeing. One man turned away quickly, but an American soldier stepped forward and forced him to look again. "Look," the soldier said firmly. A woman collapsed to the ground, fainting. A guard nudged her with his boot. "Get up," he said. "You need to see this." The group was pushed closer. Step by step, they were forced to pass directly in front of the trailer. Some began to cry openly. Others whispered, repeating the same words over and over. "This can't be real. This isn't possible." But it was real, and it had been there all along. The tour continued. The soldiers led them into a nearby building. Inside, the air felt colder. Still, controlled. This had once been a medical facility, but not in any humane sense. Tables were arranged with items carefully placed on top, as if on display. At first glance, it looked like a collection. Then the details became clear. There were preserved human remains. Objects made from things that should never have been used this way. Items that revealed a level of cruelty that went beyond orders or duty. The room told a story of obsession, of control, of people treated as objects instead of human beings. The civilians stood frozen. One man removed his glasses, wiping them repeatedly, as if the problem was his vision. Another leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. An American officer stepped forward. He spoke calmly in clear German. "You said you didn't know," he said. No one answered. "These things were made here," he continued, "close to your homes, while you lived your lives, while you attended concerts, while you walked your streets." Still no response. There was nothing left to say. The group moved again. They were taken deeper into the camp, past rows of barracks, past fences and watchtowers. Everywhere they looked, there were signs of suffering. Crowded spaces, broken structures, and the quiet presence of people who had endured more than words could explain. Then they reached an area known as the small camp. This was where the sick had been kept. The smell here was even worse. carried the sharp edge of disease and decay. Even the soldiers seemed uncomfortable, covering their faces as they stood at a distance. But the civilians were not given that option. They had to walk through it. Inside the barracks, conditions were beyond anything they had imagined. Overcrowded spaces, little air, no comfort. Figures lay on wooden bunks, barely moving. Some were alive, some were not. It was hard to tell the difference. A man from the group began to cry quietly. "I didn't know," he said under his breath. "I swear, I didn't know." But his voice sounded weak, even to himself. Then something happened that no one expected. A former prisoner stepped forward. He moved slowly, his body fragile, but his eyes focused. He approached one of the well-dressed civilians, a man who looked like a businessman, someone used to respect. The prisoner raised a trembling hand and pointed. "I remember you," he said. His voice was thin, but clear. The civilian froze. "I saw you," the prisoner continued. "At the train station. I was there. You walked past me." The man shook his head quickly. "No, that's not possible." But the prisoner didn't look away. "You saw us," he said. "You just didn't look." The words hung in the air. The civilian's face changed. The color drained from it. His shoulders dropped. Then, slowly, he sank to his knees. "I didn't understand," he whispered. "I didn't know." No one responded. Not the soldiers. Not the other civilians. Not even the prisoner. Because in that moment, the difference between not knowing and not wanting to know became impossible to ignore. The group stood in silence. And for the first time since the march began, there was no denial left, only the weight of what had been seen. The tour was not over yet.